Are you sad?
Damn straight I am. Rest in peace, Jeff Hanneman.
Slayer, bruh! That make you feel better?
A little.
I give you the warm and fuzzies in the tummies. All right, it's Q&A time.
Let's do it.
And thank you to all of you that submitted questions to us. I'm ready to talk some 1980s WWF.
Let's do it.
Yeah, even though you were an NWA guy, you want to talk about 80s WWF.
That's fine. I can do this.
Some really good questions, though. We'll get started with @RealZiggy23 asked, do you think Jake the Snake Roberts should have eventually become WWF champion?
Ooh, WWF champion? No. Maybe he should have had the IC belt.
That I'll agree with. 100%.
Maybe find a tag team partner and win the tag team championship. But I don't know. WWF championship? Nah, I couldn't really see myself putting that on.
Should he have had a WWF title feud, maybe? I would argue yes.
Sure.
But yeah, the strap, especially with some of the stuff he was doing at the time, were you really going to trust him as a company? Also at that time, too, you have to look at it, and even Jake talked about this in his DVD, Hogan was the golden goose.
Mm-hmm.
And you had other guys, too. They had a certain prototype of the babyface champion that they liked, and it worked for them, so why go against the grain?
Right.
So, would he have ever? No. Should he have? Probably not, but I agree with you about the tag titles, the IC title. That was a mistake. I do think, looking back, that was a mistake. At JRoad1279, is it true that Butch Reed was supposed to win the IC belt from Steamboat but didn't show up? Well,
not that I know of. I don't think that they were ever going to put the belt on him. I think that he was supposed to have a feud with him, though.
Well, this is going back to a story from Honky Tonk Man
right.
that he's talked about a lot, talking about that's how he ended up with the strap. I tend to believe it because, they did book Butch Reed on the card at WrestleMania 3.
They did.
And, it was one of those situations where I could see where they were going to go there, and then you think about it, around that time, you really didn't see Butch Reed there anymore, did you?
No.
So I'm just throwing that out there. So I would tend to believe Honky on that one. I really would. At AA0707, Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat for the WWF Championship. Should this have ever happened? Actually, Big Red MC716, I think, asked the same exact question.
Should it have happened? I don't think it could have really happened.
Yeah, I don't.
Just given the time frame and stuff like that when Savage was the belt holder. I mean, he was a face.
Or if you said, what if Savage had the belt as a heel and Steamboat was the babyface challenger?
Yeah, But I mean, the only time that Savage was really a heel when he had in his first run was
right at the end of the
right, and that was
leading into
WrestleMania
5.
So
should they have? No, because I think it has its own special place at WrestleMania 3. Their feud actually stemmed back to going to back in mid-86, really.
Right.
So no. At Javi El Artabo, if you could go back in time, what's the most extreme thing you would do in order to get WrestleMania 3 tickets?
You're going to have to answer this one because I actually kind of got WrestleMania 3 tickets.
And how was that?
Well, I actually watched it at one of those closed circuit places in Cedar Rapids.
That doesn't count.
I got a ticket stub that says WrestleMania 3 on it. What do you got?
That's a very penis maneuver right there.
It still works.
Most extreme thing I would probably do is I would probably sell Mike's ass to the highest bidder.
Okay. I would probably sell Mike's car. How about?
Should Dino Bravo? No! Nothing was should Dino Bravo. Should Dino Bravo have been the WWF champion?
Yes!
No.
Yes!
Fuck off.
Hey, he bench pressed 700 pounds. Facts are facts.
At LaRockin' Nerd, do you think Cena would have been over with his current gimmick in the 80s?
Easily.
Yes.
In the 80s, yeah, easily.
Cena would have been a huge star with this current gimmick.
You wouldn't have heard one boo or anything like that coming from the crowd.
No, that wouldn't have started happening until the early 90s.
Right.
It wouldn't have been as big as Hogan, but would Cena have a star in the 80s? Oh, fuck
yeah.
Absolutely.
Easily.
Absolutely. Yeah. At Robert Scott Reed, did the 80s have the best characters in mid-card? And should WWE go back to that format of simple heel versus face?
Did they have the best characters on the mid-card? Yeah. Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
Did they have the best mid card? It depends on what you look for in your mid card, because the NWA had a hell of a mid card at the time too.
It depends. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're looking for, because the NWA had more serious characters.
Well, no, they're just saying just the mid card period.
Just mid card period. Okay.
They had a great mid card, because you figure they had taken so many top guys from the territories, they kind of ended up with the best mid card by default.
Right. NWA though was close at times.
They still had a lot of talent in the mid card too. At Dakota Did You, what are some things that the 80s WWF did that the current product needs to do now? I will keep it very simple. One thing is, if you're appealing to kids, use some animals.
Sure.
The British Bulldogs, Jake the Snake Roberts, Coco Beware. Even Ricky the Dragon.
Yeah, he had the Komodo dragon.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's just one thing you could do that I think would instantly make things a little bit better. As far as some of the other things that they did,
see, it's hard now, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the people that came into the WWF at that time, they were working territories, and they were working 8, 9, 10 years plying their craft before they got into the WWF.
A lot of times as those specific characters. But that's something I think you could tie in, is you could say that some of these guys that have worked the independence, like El Generico, for example.
Sure.
He's been El Generico for how many effing years?
Yeah.
So you bring him into NXT, and you're going to totally change him up. No!
Exactly.
Keep him El Generico.
Yeah.
Even if you change his name so you could own the rights, let him be the same basic fundamental character that he's been for years, so that way when he comes up to the show, he's really ready. That's something I think that they could really do.
That's something that they could do.
Now, not everybody was like that. DiBiase underwent a character change when he came. Kurt Hennig did, but in general, a lot of these guys.
But those guys are playing their trade at that time, and DiBiase worked heel, wherever he went, at least at some point. So he was playing his trade to that. Whereas these guys nowadays, they get a little bit developmental, then they bring him back.
Storytelling was much better, and the storytelling of the commentary was much better. There's many other things, but those are some. Who are some wrestlers' gimmicks from the 80s that would work really well today? Hogan, I think, would still work because of the strength of personality and character and charisma.
Junkyard Dog.
Big time. Big time. Sergeant Slaughter as a face and especially as a heel. I think he would work.
I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to go Chico Santana.
I bet he would. Especially with the large Hispanic following, he would be a big star, I think. Andre would work. Macho Man would work. Mr. Perfect would work. Ravishing Rick Rude would work. Jake the Snake Roberts would work. A decade ago, Hacksaw Jim Duggan would have worked very well. Would it work so well now? I don't know about that. I think Coco Beware would work because of the Bird Frankie. I don't think you agree with that all the way.
No.
I don't know if Ultimate Warrior would work.
Would Adrian Adonis work?
I think he could.
I think he could.
I think he could because he would push some of those sexual boundaries.
He would.
He would make people uncomfortable. I think he could potentially work.
I mean, we kind of touch on that with Gold Dust a little bit, But
would Piper work?
Piper works still. I mean, he really hasn't.
But if you were introducing that character today,
probably not.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Tag teams like the Hart Foundation would work. The Rockers would work. The British Bulldogs, I think, would work. So, there were a lot of characters from then that would work now, as opposed to, I don't think there are a lot of characters now that would work then.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. What do we got next? At Tom Hartnell, excuse me. Why didn't Big John Studd, JYD, or Ted DiBiase ever become champion? Technically, DiBiase kind of became champion.
Well, he was tag team champion.
But remember, he technically bought the belt from Andre.
Yeah, so he held it for what? Well, okay, does it really count as a title hold? For like 10 seconds or whatever.
Big John Studd was more of a dance partner for a guy like a Hogan than a guy you have to put the strap.
Or Andre, he was more of a dance partner for Andre.
Or he was a dance partner for Andre as well. Exactly.
Right. And Junkyard Dog, I don't think you needed to put the belt on him at that time. I think that you needed to
put the IC title on.
You could have, but I mean,
you should have.
Well, here's the thing. Back then,
you should have.
They put the belt on the faces to get the faces over. He was so over. He didn't need the belt.
And I understand that you didn't want to have both champions be babyface a lot of times, especially with Hogan, because you didn't want one babyface potentially overshadowing the other. But Ted DiBiase, again, did he really need the belt? Sometimes that's what it was. And you had the Golden Goose in Hogan, and then you had other guys like Warrior and Savage.
He had such a character, though, DiBiase did, that, he was so...
Do you think that Big John Studd should have ever headlined a WrestleMania? In theory, he kind of did. He was one of the main acts of WrestleMania 1. So
I would have to say that he was right.
He was also a big part of WrestleMania 2 in that 20-man battle royal in Chicago at Rosemont Horizon.
Yeah, him and the refrigerator got into it a little bit there. Yeah,
exactly. So I would say in his own ways, he headlined. He might not have main evented, but he was a featured attraction for those first two in particular. At California EST 96, when did Hogan become a larger-than-life star? 84, when he beat the Sheik for the belt and what they did afterwards. That's when he became a larger-than-life star.
I would actually argue it was actually before that.
You're going to go to the AWA days.
I'm going to go to the AWA days and say when he made his appearance in Rocky III.
This could be argued, although I will say, when did he become larger than life to the point where everybody knew him all around the world? When they really knew him all around the world, and when did he start becoming a household name? Was 84, 85.
I don't know. Rocky III was all over the place, too. So
you're all over the place. At Blanchard Buzz, name two of your favorite teams for Survivor Series 87 to 89 and tell me who wins if they face and who survives. You know, I'm not even going to go back and think about that.
Oh,
that's just too much to think about. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a jerk about that at all. Yeah, no, I don't. No, I'm not going to go back and think about that. Let's see here. At Dankin Twit, the 80s well, I'll put it to you this way as far as the Survivor Series question. What was it? Survivor Series 87, you had Hogan's team versus Andre's team.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep those two teams together. There, I've answered your question. I hope the best I can. At Dankin Twit, the 80s WWF was before my time. What would be the three best matches for me to watch from that time to understand why the era was so good?
Ooh. Only three?
Just three. Pick the three that would best epitomize the 80s WWF.
Savage Steamboat.
WrestleMania 3 because it shows the talent from the other territories in the mid-card.
Absolutely.
I think same show, you have to watch Hogan and Andre because you have to understand what could draw 93,173 people to the Silverdome. You have to understand how big of an attraction the WWF was. You have to understand how much of a main event thing wrestling had become and the WWF as a company had become. And you had the two biggest stars in the world of wrestling, bar none, in Hogan and Andre in the ring at WrestleMania.
One thing, if you're going to go back and watch that match, go back and watch the setup to it as well.
It's incredibly important to understand that as well. A third match, I would say from the 80s, you know, there are under-the-radar matches I would throw in there, maybe like Pat Patterson versus Slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're a big fan of a cage match.
Oh, Jimmy Snuka and Magnificent Morocco in the Garden. Yeah, I'm not the only one that's a big fan of that match.
No, you're not. And for good reason. It was a phenomenal match. But those are just some. I mean, but if you watch any of those three matches we just named, you get a better understanding of the greatness of the WWF in the 80s. At Orton G. Armstrong, I was going to throw in there some other tag team matches like you threw in the WrestleMania 1.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the main event. I'm talking about Sheik and Volkov against the U.S. Express.
Because it was a very nationalistic time in the 80s, coming off the heels of the Iran hostage crisis from 79 to 81. And then you still had the Cold War was in full effect with Reagan in the 80s, so that's a match too that helps you understand the patriotism at the time or the nationalism. Orton G. Armstrong asks, is there any 80s WWF wrestler who would have been a big star for WWF as Hogan in the 80s if Hogan had never been born?
Wow, Hogan had never been born, huh?
Andre was more special attraction. You didn't want to ruin the attraction by featuring him too much in too big of a way.
Yeah, they let him go other places too, so I
which
really
was part of it.
Yeah.
Could anybody have been? This is always that time-honored question of who made who. I don't think so.
I really it'd be hard, because I mean he was such and still is. I mean he's just that polarizing guy that his personality is unmatched.
I will put in the description box what the topic of our next Q&A is going to be, so make sure you go on Twitter and submit your questions there. In the meantime, this was a fun Q&A. I enjoyed talking about the 80s WWF. I miss those days because those are the days I grew up on. They made me a fan of wrestling.